Ladies and gentlemen, it is now 6:46 p.m. and a quorum of members is present, so the meeting of the Board of Education of the School District of New Berlin is called to order. Please call the roll.
Ms. Crosby.
Here.
Mr. Helmer.
Here.
Mr. Kurth. Here. Ms. Schulz.
Here.
Mr. Seidel.
Here.
Ms. Unger.
Here.
Ms. Wondercheck.
I would entertain a motion to recess to closed session.
Madam President, I move to recess into closed session pursuant to Section 19.851C E and F of the Wisconsin statutes to consider A, the approval of closed session minutes of March 14th, B, employment services report, and that's it.
Second.
I have a motion by Mr. Kurth and a second by Mr. Helmer. Please call the roll.
Mr. Kurth.
Yes.
Mr. Helmer.
Yes.
Ms. Crosby.
Yes.
Ms. Schulz.
Yes.
Mr. Seidel.
Yes.
Ms. Unger.
Yes.
We're moving to closed session and return to open session around 7 o'clock. It is now 7 o'clock, and we're returning from closed session into open session. In recognition of the serious and important nature of our efforts here, we will join in the Pledge of Allegiance to the flag. For all those who are able, please rise. And now, for those who wish to prepare for the meeting, we will have a moment of silence. This is a public meeting of the Board of Education. Prior to this meeting, notice was given to the public last Friday by providing the agenda to the City Library. The agenda was also posted on the district website. A copy of the agenda was forwarded to the Journal-Sentinel, the Waukesha Freeman, the Waukesha Now, all of which have filed requests for all public notices. Meetings of the board are conducted for the purpose of carrying on, we're moving on to privilege of the floor. Meetings of the board are conducted for the purpose of carrying on the business of the schools and therefore are not public meetings, but meetings held in public. This portion of the meeting is an opportunity for you to come and voice your concerns to the board, so please do not be offended when we quietly listen. We may even take notes. We do not immediately respond to your questions and comments. This is a time for you to talk and us to listen. Thank you for coming to voice your comments and concerns. When I call your name, please step up to the microphone, address the chair, and state your name and whether or not you are a resident in the school district. Each presentation is to be restricted to a maximum of 3 minutes. Privilege of the floor will be limited to 1/2 hour. Presentations are not to be designed for purposes of engaging others in a debate in this forum. Discussion of certified, classified, or professional personnel or of individual Board of Education members shall not be considered an appropriate topic for this forum, and the speaker will be ruled out of order. We have one speaker tonight, Scott Yunch.
Good evening, Scott Yunch. I'm a member of the school district. I come to you today to congratulate you on the success of the committee process. I know that some of you do not recognize the value of having committees, but I'm here with information about how one of the policies that you are discussing tonight is better because of the committee's unique ability to involve the public in the process. Last year, the Finance Committee was reviewing Policy 6605, which has to do with fundraising via crowdfunding. When I read the proposed policy, my experience as president of the Eisenhower Band Booster Association gave me a perspective on the policy. If passed with that language, I was concerned that it could cause unintended consequences for booster clubs and groups in the school and limit their ability to hold fundraisers. I attended the Finance Committee and raised my question to Ron Seidel, Amy Crosby, Kerslyn Wonderschek, and CFO Patrick Miller. All were in agreement that the language I noted could have the negative consequences I mentioned, and we discussed ways to modify the language to avoid those unintended consequences. I was very happy to see future revisions of the policy included a greater effort to define crowdfunding so that it did not include acceptable activities that were already taking place. I hope that this example will demonstrate the power of the committee structure in your operations, and also the fact that involving the public in the process made the product that you see before you tonight better than it would have been without it. If this review process had been handled instead in the course of a school board meeting, I would not have been allowed to be part of that process. I would have been sidelined to this privilege of the floor time period where there is no interaction and no beneficial discussions between the public and the school board and the staff. My input and perspective would not have had the impact that it did. I encourage you to keep the committee structure and for every committee to meet as often as needed. Doing so allows the board to provide oversight and awareness in its duty as stewards of taxpayer funds and district goals and the transparency that comes from public proceedings. I've seen great things in these committee meetings. They are an important element of leading our school district. Increased public participation and greater transparency of the school board should be the goal of everyone involved. Thank you.
Thank you. I don't have a message this evening, so we'll move on to the administrative team report. We have our secondary student representative update first.
Good evening, everyone. This last week, students and teachers enjoyed a nice long spring break, which was well-deserved. And this week, everyone's really just getting back in the swing of things, which this Friday will mark the end of the third quarter, meaning fourth quarter, and along with that, it's time for AP tests. So a lot of teachers and students are really wrapping up content in the classrooms, and they're getting ready to prepare for those AP tests coming up in the beginning of May. Also, over spring break, the band and orchestra teams, they had a great experience in Washington, D.C., playing music at multiple venues, along with visiting countless memorials and museums during their trip. Leading into spring break, the Ike DECA team, they held the highly anticipated Ike Madness Tournament this year. And in this tournament, teams of students compete in a March Madness-style basketball tournament to raise money for Make-A-Wish, and the winning girls and boys team got to play a team made up of teachers at an assembly on Friday. Also, prom is this Friday, and it's going to be held at the Brookfield Conference Center this year, and students are very excited because it's their first prom they've been able to have in 2 years. Somos is holding an Encanto movie night tomorrow night in the Eisenhower Commons, and churros and burritos will be sold alongside the movie. Student Union is holding a Friends-themed blood drive through the Red Cross on April 13th. The winter sports season has finally come to an end, even though it is still very cold outside, and that means that spring sports are finally underway. With the winter sports season coming to an end, there were multiple student athletes who received all-conference honors. Of those students, Lexi Bugaiski and Woodland Conference scholar athlete Bryn Furstenberg both received WBCA All-State honors for girls basketball. Also, Ike Track is getting ready to take a trip to Ripon College tomorrow for a very big track meet. And finally, at the STEM Forward Engineering Machine Design Contest, our purple team won third place and won the Spirit of Innovation Siemens Award. Also, our gold team placed first place and won the Best Technical Construction WCTC Award. Both teams will advance to the 2022 Engineering Machine Design Championship on April 22nd in Mankato, and good luck to them representing our purple and gold. Thank you.
Thanks. And then we have our superintendent update.
I'll keep my update brief. I do want to talk about a couple different things related to the reports that the board will be approving shortly. Specifically, the February financial donation report. The first item on that report, and I know that Ron will typically read those on behalf of the Finance Committee in appreciation, is our partnership with Optimum Crush. And the board at the last meeting approved a $25,000 5-year naming rights of the New Berlin West softball field with the company Optimum Crush, who is here in New Berlin. They are now one of 3 different organizations and companies that we've partnered with outside of OHAL and Drexel Supply for naming rights in the school district. We're going to continue down that venture, and in fact, we have 2 to 3 other businesses that we're currently working with and other foundations with regard to supporting our efforts in the district. But I also would be remiss if I didn't talk about the elementary home and schools and all of the booster clubs. And, you know, all the work that's kind of done behind the scenes to garner support in our schools. Our home and schools raise tens of thousands of dollars on behalf of their respective schools. Our booster clubs raise tens of thousands of dollars for their respective either athletic or activity and or beyond. We are now starting to work with the Education Foundation of New Berlin, and they are now starting to garner support for scholarships for our students. And I just want to clarify that while right now our focus is on the sponsorships of our facilities, because that is somewhat of a new venture for the district, there is a constant will and support of our parents and community of our school district. And I'm really proud to be able to say that we not only appreciate that, but we also appreciate the partnerships that we have. And, you know, for example, the Home and Schools were recognized, I believe it was last year, for being a friend of education, and it was certainly well-deserved. But again, I know we were talking about sponsorships and naming rights, and I just, again, want to remind ourselves that there is so much more happening beyond just those naming rights and donations and additional support to our school district. So thanks to all that have committed those financial dollars and or time and effort, because I know the Home and School folks behind the scenes are spending a lot of time to garner those dollars for our schools. So again, thank you all very much for that support. And I know, Ron, I don't want to steal the thunder of the donation report, but I just want to highlight all of the support that we gave. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Then we have our district reports, which include the incident report, the enrollment report, suspension report, and the donation report. So Mr. Seidel, if you would please read the donation report.
First donation we received was on the 3/29 from Optimum Crush. Optimum Crush support the naming of the New Berlin West softball field in the amount of $5,000. The approval date was 3/2/22. The next thing was 3/29 for Poplar Creek PTO. Support field trips at Poplar Creek in the amount of $3,160. The third item was Elmwood Home and School to support Playworks in the amount of $3,000. The next donation was from Richard Nuccio, support a scholarship fund in the amount of $1,000. The next item was Lifetime Realty Group for New Berlin Eisenhower to support the 2022 Eisenhower Scores Table sponsorship in the amount of $1,200. The last one we have right here is New Berlin West. Mike Cannon support the New Berlin West Build motorcycle team in the amount of $300. This brings our total donation amount to $13,660. Thank you so much to all of our generous donors, and it just keeps getting better. So thank you.
The next item on the agenda is the consent agenda, which includes the notice, the approval of minutes of March 14th, financial reports, and also a new student group, Winter Guard. Are there any items that should be pulled out for separate consideration?
Janet, I did want to note the Winter Guard, which is really just a continuation of the marching band color guard. They are self-funded. There are no additional costs to the school district, and we would be recommending approval as presented.
Do I have a motion?
So moved.
I have a motion by Mr. Helmer, a second by Mr. Kurth, to approve the consent agenda as presented. Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, raise your right hand. All those opposed, motion passes. On to our regular agenda. First on the regular agenda is the Ela Resource Presentation.
Yeah, so before we get started in the formal presentation, I just wanted to let the board know and remind the board that we are typically on a revision cycle for our curricular resources every 6 to 8 years. I say typically 6 to 8 years because sometimes the state either changes the standards on us or the resource that we received, the timing of it actually is either limited or extended based on codes for online resources and so on. Particularly with ELA, we actually delayed the rollover into these for various reasons. And just want to let you know that, again, it's been, every year it's a continuous improvement process. So when we gather resources, most recently the board's approved social studies and math. We are a professional learning community. We are about continuous improvement. And I do want to clarify that the resource is not the end. It is a means to the end. And our teachers are the ones that actually are the glue to pull this together for our student learning. So, just like, for example, when we adopted a one-to-one initiative to getting a laptop for our students, a device is a device is a device. It is a means to the end. It is not the end. Digital learning and how we utilize that device is the end and the learning that happens is the end. So, again, it's a multi-year approach. We've spent several years down this path, and I'll hand it over to the team to talk about where we're at. Tonight is strictly a presentation. We are not seeking your approval tonight. We will be doing that at the next school board meeting. Go ahead.
So before I hand it over to Kelly, Brady, and a lot of staff that are here tonight to also share with you kind of their thoughts on the process, we just wanted to, I'm going to thank them again, but we have a lot of people that invested a lot of time and energy into making the best decision for all of our students in New Berlin. And I am exceptionally proud to work alongside these lovely two people here, as well as the rest of the people that are here behind us. So I'm going to turn it over to Brady and Kelly. I'll interject at times, and then I'll kind of end the presentation when we're done.
All right. Good evening, everybody. Thank you so much for having us. It's good to be here. We're not talking about data, so we won't have 400 slides of graphs for you to look at. So you're welcome for that, although we're happy to talk about that at any point. So why now? Joe kind of got into that, so we're gonna skip that slide. But our next slide I'd ask you just to look at and consider is this slide up here. This was actually a slide that was done by NAEP, which is the kind of the nationwide assessment. New Berlin schools participate in that assessment, and it's kind of an interesting infographic if you look at it, where it points out that really across our country, in a class of, if there's a class of 28 kids, only about 10 of them, or a little less than 10 of them, would be proficient in reading. That's somewhat scary, for our country. We know that School District New Berlin, we're very proud of the work that we've done, and you've all seen our data. Again, I promised you I wouldn't talk about that, so I'm not going to. But we fare a little bit better than maybe kids across the nation. But everything I say or we talk about today, we want to frame it with that in mind. So let's talk about the current program that we use. We've adopted the units of study that was done by Lucy Calkins. We've been doing it for 7 years, I believe. Interestingly, right now, Lucy Calkins has taken a little bit of heat with some things out there. APM Reports, a lady by the name of Emily Hanford, has really started to question some of the research behind the things that are going on within the Lucy Calkins units of study. Additionally, Natalie Wexler wrote a book called The Knowledge Gap. We actually had Natalie come in to the district last month to do some learning for our staff, and she's been a little bit critical of Lucy Calkins. I'd encourage you to read the book, The Knowledge Gap, if you want to learn more. In fact, we can get you copies of that book.
Yeah, I did want to just remind the board that last week I did send, I guess you could call it an executive summary of the work that's been done behind the scenes. I tried to keep it as high level as possible, but note that's just a very small sampling to kind of put into context of the work that this team has kind of gone into. But Brady, go ahead.
Yeah, another resource recently, a very prevalent resource that's out there called Ed Reports. It's a nonprofit group that rates different curricular resources, labeled our current resource as red, so doesn't meet their standards for high-quality instructional product, as well as recently a report came out by 7 different researchers, a couple of which who are actually on the National Reading Panel. We won't get into that, but that's in the document that Joe shared, that pretty much, well, you can see some of their quotes there. So a group ran into a little bit of a conundrum. You could say that, boy, our reading scores are good, but they're not great. The board has actually challenged us several times to improve your reading scores. So what are you going to do about it? You've got a resource that maybe isn't the best. So, you see a couple of questions here that we really started our process with a couple of years ago, talking about, like, what are we trying to do here? Are we going to try to patch what we're doing, or are we going to look to move a different direction to set us up for the future? So enter the current discussion in the world of reading. It's on the science of reading. It's talking about what does the research tell us is the most effective way. If you look back to the Emily Hanford article or the knowledge gap, they both talk about, well, what is the research telling us, and how do we do that best in education? So you can see kind of the definition of this kind of science of reading movement, and then you can see a definition. You can really see, like, when we talk about the research, we don't just talk about educational research. Educational research is really important, but we talk about things like cognitive psychology, special education, implementation science, linguistics, all those different bodies of research coming together to tell us, there is actually a really good way to teach reading. And then you can see really what the science of reading is not. And I really want to point out something that I think is a common misconception when we start talking about the science of reading, is that bottom point. It's a single specific component of instruction, specifically phonics. Everybody thinks, oh, it's phonics instruction. You're just going to teach kids phonics and it'll be okay. Well, that's a part, right? We know that's a really important part, systematic phonics instruction, but it's not the whole science of reading. So what is the basis of this whole science of reading thing? Well, it's based on a theory put out by Goen Tumner in 1986 that just talked about, well, reading is really word recognition times language comprehension, and that gets you to reading comprehension. That study, or that theory, has been backed up by 150 scientific different pieces. And it's about reading comprehension. Notice that I put in there, it's not a addition problem, it's a multiplication problem. So we won't get into that because this isn't a math presentation either. Finally, well, what does that mean? In 2000, I can't remember, I think it was probably 1, Hollis Scarborough put out the what's been coming known as Scarborough's reading rope. Scarborough's reading rope is this whole idea of, these are the things that go into being a really skilled reader, and they start out, and as kids get instruction, they weave together until eventually they get to be a skilled reader. So those two pieces are what we kind of started to explore, of like, man, is our current resource really doing all of those pieces for us? And we unfortunately had to come to the answer of much like the people I shared before did, of not really. I'll turn over to Kelly.
Okay, so Brady was talking a little bit about our K-6 resource. We don't use that same resource in 7 through 12. We do a lot of teacher-developed units, which can also be problematic, because when you think about fidelity to a curriculum and parent transparency and just being really tight to the standards, that also has some issues. So when you think about a secondary reader, and you look at that Scarborough's rope that Brady was just showing, there are a lot of different elements that goes into making a strong reader. And so at middle school, there's not a one-size-fits-all model of instruction, and there's a lot of different aspects that we need to make sure that we're hitting with any resource in any curriculum. When you think about, there's still students in middle school, like we saw in our data presentation, that are struggling with decoding, but we also have really advanced students that are ready for the next steps of writing. So we wanted to look at a resource that could really fit all of the needs of our students on that learner continuum. So Joe mentioned before, there's a lot of different reasons why we would look at a curricular alignment or a different resource. One of our reasons here is we got new standards for ELA in the state of Wisconsin in 2020. They came out. So we examined those standards, not huge shifts, but there were some shifts in the area of reading, writing, speaking, and listening. We looked at also the ACT standards, not a whole lot of shifts, but we look at them as a continuum K-12. We want to make sure when we're looking at resources that we're looking at resources that will continuously improve and challenge our students and their success in the area of college, career, and life readiness, and also be respectful of our taxpayers and be fiscally responsible. Here are some of the steps that we took as teacher teams, as work teams in the area of ELA this year and last year. We examined our data, if there was any gaps within our data or any grade levels that were specifically needing more support than others. We built teacher teams. We got feedback from a lot of students, families. That was my favorite part. Teachers. We interviewed a lot of teachers and asked questions, got feedback from them on the different resources. We contacted different vendors, different districts. There's a neat database out there that shows what other districts use, and then we followed up with phone calls, not just in the state of Wisconsin, but also outside of Wisconsin, looking for other comparable communities to ours and what they were using to be successful. And we're here now presenting a proposal to you, our school board.
So what we're looking for, there's a lot of stuff that's written on this slide, and I want to just emphasize two. One, we wanted to look for something that completely aligned with our learning management system, which is Canvas. And so this is a resource, all the resources that we were reviewing, we wanted to make sure, since this is our learning management system, that we are aligning it with Canvas. The other thing that we were very intentional about is that in the school district of New Berlin, we have one student transition point, one major student transition point, and that is between 6th and 7th grade. And we wanted to make sure that we were selecting a resource that would support our students over that transition point. And as Kelly highlighted, you know, units of study are just through 6th grade. And our middle schools were using really nice resources. They were doing the best that they could with teacher-developed pieces. But that was one of our guiding pieces, is that we really wanted to make sure that we were supporting our students through that one transition point.
I got to catch up because these guys don't make my slides go. Anyway, just really quick, Kelly talked a little bit about secondary priorities, elementary priorities. Our committee, when we started meeting this year, we dug into a piece of work that reviewed a ton of the research. I think we made available to you by Pimentel and Liebman, and we thought, you know, there are really 5 big things we want to look at. One, foundational skills. They're the foundation of everything. We can't deny that, right? The reading rope showed us that. We also knew that knowledge matters a lot, right? Building kids' knowledge. I mean, we can all think about that. If we're just teaching kids skills and they don't have any knowledge to go with those skills, we've got a bit of a problem, and that's what Natalie Wexler talks about a lot. Growing vocabulary matters a lot too, right? I think I've shared with you stories about my own kids before. Growing their vocabulary is really important. My son has this unbelievable vocabulary, and it's like, man, where did he get those things? But that's really important. Do all kids have that? I think his teachers are great, but I think his parents are actually pretty good too. You could have laughed. That would help. But thank you. Yeah. We also learned that this whole idea of text-based writing really has this untapped power, and we don't really tap into that. Writing about what we read is really, really important. And, maybe we haven't tapped into that so well. And then this is really another interesting quote that we learned, that comprehension is not necessarily a skill you teach all the time. It's a condition you create. Through that building of knowledge and building of vocabulary, it's this condition that you create. So we heard about some challenges from parents. We talked to parents, and we heard a lot of really good things about from our parents, which is really super. We are a high-performing district. But we also heard about some things that were, maybe not as great. A couple of them are, this whole reading level thing. Kids are like so aware of that, and there's this competition that goes on, and it's really, really hard. Grammar, we've heard about complex vocabulary not being the greatest. Handwriting was brought up by our parents. Like, oh my gosh, my kids, they write like this 25-page story, and I can't even read it because we don't really work on their handwriting when they're young. And it's gotten worse, I think, a little bit, maybe with some of the pandemic stuff. And then we also heard from students. Kelly and I went out to different buildings. I went to every single building in the district, talked to kids from every single grade level. Some common themes. The instruction is repetitive. We hear it the same thing over and over. In fact, one fifth grader told me, sometimes I think you just don't trust that I know this stuff, but I already do. So that was a great conversation. And then we heard this overwhelming thing of we want to learn, we need to read more nonfiction. We want to learn things. We want to learn about history. We want to learn about science. We want to learn about outer space and animals and all this kind of stuff. Going back to that whole comprehension is a condition you create, not a skill you necessarily teach. So we reviewed a whole bunch of different resources. There's tons of them out there right now. Interestingly, every single one of them puts those stickers on their products right now because they're trying to sell products because they know the science of reading movement is really big right now. They're all putting that. In fact, the front pages of just about every resource we reviewed had that simple view of reading and that Scarborough's rope. So our job as a committee then was to really dig into them, spend a lot of time with them and figure out which ones actually do it. You maybe noticed that, maybe you didn't. Probably didn't because maybe you weren't looking at it. The same thing happened when the Common Core came. Every resource out there said we're Common Core aligned. They placed a sticker on it, and then a lot of districts bought them and said, no, you're not. And we didn't want that to happen. So we spent a lot of time. We dug into these resources. So these are all the ones we took a look at, including having a conversation with our current provider, the Lucy Calkins. In fact, we talked directly to her, which was actually kind of cool. She was, kind of a celebrity in our world. So we got to talk to her for about an hour, which was neat. So after all that, we came to this realization that this product by Amplify, CKLA, and then ELA were the products that were built most originally on the science of reading, not something that people are putting a sticker on saying, hey, we're going to do this to sell books. And then Kelly talked a little bit. CKLA or Amplify doesn't have a high school product, so the high school team chose to go forward with a HMH product. So one thing that we want you to know is that it's a little bit different. The CKLA product is a bit different than the way we've taught in the past. So we invited Peter Brenner and Dr. Karen Vendetti from Amplify to just give you just a little bit of an overview, high-level overview of the product. Please keep in mind, Amplify is a great team. We've had a lot of great conversations with them. Do know that Peter is actually on vacation right now in Florida, and he flew in to present or to talk to you. And Karen actually lives in Indiana, so she drove up here to do a 10-minute presentation. So that's the kind of service we've been getting from Amplify. So I'm going to turn it over to them, and we'll go on with the presentation.
Thank you, board members, for the opportunity to present Amplify's kindergarten through 8th grade literacy suite. As Brady mentioned, my name is Peter Brenner. I serve as a field manager for Amplify. I do live in Madison. For the remainder of the week, I'm going to live in Florida and enjoy some nice weather after this. But with me is Dr. Karen Venditti, a content specialist and a contributor to Amplify CKLA. I'm going to take a few minutes to provide an overview of Amplify Literacy, why districts choose to partner with us, and why we're so successful in this space. After that, I'm going to hand it over to Dr. Venditti for a brief presentation on the alignment of Amplify Literacy to the research behind how students learn to read. At Amplify, we partner with districts to deliver comprehensive, high-quality, and rigorous literacy resources to all students covering grades kindergarten through 8th. We find that districts partner with Amplify when they are seeking to adopt high-quality instructional resources. All of Amplify's literacy resources are rated all green by edreports.org, which is an independent, nonprofit organization designed to improve education by providing reviews of K-12 instructional resources. These districts are also in need of teacher resources that are comprehensive, intuitive, and easy to use. We find that these districts are seeking a partner that provides ongoing professional development so that the resources are implemented with fidelity and the return on the district's investment is maximized. Finally, districts choose to adopt Amplify when they are looking to improve the outcomes of all readers, including those that need additional support to those that need enrichment opportunities. Amplify is a leader in literacy instruction, and we're a leader because, one, as I mentioned, all of our literacy solutions are rated high quality, including our foundational skills components as a standalone foundational program. Our literacy solutions are aligned to research-based best practices so that all students can be successful. And finally, we consistently solicit feedback from our partners so that as their needs change, our resources evolve to meet those changes. I'm going to hand it over to Dr. Venditti to provide a brief overview of Amplify. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Peter. Thank you, board, for having us share this today. My little blurb is there. I don't know that you need to see that. Purdue University is mentioned there. I don't want that to hold that against me. So maybe I'll just go quickly through that. I'm here to talk to you about Amplify CKLA in grades K to 5 and Amplify ELA in grades 6 to 8. And really thinking about the connection, as you've all mentioned, to that consistency from early on into your middle school, transitioning into high school, and how important that is. And that connection really starts with knowledge building. And so I know that's really hard for you to see. We've left some packets where you have program guides for K to 5 and 6 to 8, so you can see this connection across grades. But the knowledge building starts, and how important that is to start with our earliest learners. So we're going to do that in kindergarten, and that builds across time. And so as I saw some things that Brady shared about your students, what they're interested in, what parents are interested in, you're going to see those literature, social studies, science, arts, all of those wonderful connections that students are going to build. And as your student representative mentioned, those AP tests, these are things that are going to prepare kids for the knowledge, because a lot of that knowledge is on those AP tests. And so, as Brady mentioned, the Simple View of Reading, Philip Goff and William Tumner's work, really thinking about those two aspects. I want to share how CKLA is aligned to those two aspects and how it was designed with the research in mind, making sure that students are getting what they need at the appropriate time. And so when you look at how it's laid out, and this is, again, Dr. Hollis Scarborough's work in dyslexia research, the top half, we're working on knowledge building, vocabulary development, as Brady shared, language structures. The bottom half, the phonics aspect, those foundational skills. And we're going to make sure students get that so that when they do become more immersed in that text and in addressing complex text, they're going to be able to do that independently, how important that is. And so what does it look like in terms of K to 2? We've got 2 separate strands where teachers are going to be reading aloud to kids about these wonderful, rich topics. And I know I've already talked to your teachers today that they're going to share some neat things that they've seen with students actually in trying some of the domains. They're going to be hearing vocabulary, building that language that they're absorbing, that they're going to share back. All those wonderful ideas. Because as Brady shared, it's not just about phonics, as sometimes people say. So that bottom half, that word recognition, where you all think about when I look at a word, can I decode it? Can I read that? That's what our students need to be able to do. And so our K to 2 kids are going to be working on that in wonderful, rich readers. And so kids are going to be reading, and they're going to be hearing wonderful stories as well. And then when we get up to grades 3 through 5, that becomes integrated. And so we're going to integrate those skills and we're going to move it on not just to decoding, but morphology, where they're looking at word parts and Greek roots, and they're going to be applying all of those language structures that they've heard in these wonderful read-alouds to text about these topics. And so again, they're going to be working on all of these things in the developmental area that's appropriate based on the standards and the skills, and then that's going to continue on into grades 6, 7, and 8, and building all of that wonderful knowledge to prepare them for high school and beyond. And so I know at this point, Brady and the team, the team that has done so much work, wants to share about some of the things that they found.
All right, thank you, Karen and Peter. Yeah, we wanted to have them come because it provided a little context. I know some of you will come in throughout the week and review things, so we wanted to provide a little context. A step that Joe has really challenged both Kelly and I with has been reach out to other high-achieving suburban districts to get their feedback. He's been on me about that since probably, September? Because this is a little different, right? It's not a program that's being used consistently throughout the state. There's a few other school districts. So I've talked to districts in a couple districts in Pennsylvania, some in New York, some in Delaware, all high-achieving suburban districts. You can see some of the quotes I got from their directors of teaching and learning, or whatever they're called in their various roles. I know one of the questions sometimes is, what about the rigor? I think some of these quotes, that was one of the specific things I asked about, is what about the rigor? So you can see some of the really great quotes. Another part of our process is really digging into the resource, digging through it, talking about it, debating about it, and just living it, and we do that with our teachers because our teachers are the ones, as Joe said, that are going to make things go. You guys know that, we know that. So I invited some of our teachers to come who have dug in to all the resources that we looked at. Some have tried different portions of them in their classrooms. Some have really just spent a ton of time processing through, talking to their teams about them, those kinds of things. So they're each going to come up. They're going to come up and share just a little bit about what they've experienced with the resource that we're proposing. So come on up.
Hi there, I'm Nancy Bauman, and I have been teaching first grade at Poplar Creek for 6 years now. Last year, I earned a credential in structured literacy intervention from Carroll University. There, I studied the science of reading and learned what structured literacy should look like. In my opinion, Amplify CKLA follows it more closely than any other program that we investigated. During the last few months, I was able to teach part of a skills strand, and I'm finishing a knowledge strand right now from the Amplify curriculum. This has allowed me to really dive into that curriculum. The skills strand taught a feature, allowed for reading of that feature in a decodable book, had a writing piece where kids could practice consistently writing that feature, and had review pieces for features taught. Comprehension building was also a piece of the strand using the decodable book. All the decodables that I looked at were engaging and age appropriate. My kids enjoyed the story in the one that we read, and almost all of them were secure with the feature after all the instruction. Yes, there are worksheets, but we know that writing is a key element for kids in mapping these features in their brain. In the knowledge strand, I'm teaching about space. The read aloud pictures that I use are vibrant and not too busy. The content is engaging every day and is rich with vocabulary. I consistently have to tell my kids to sit back down because they are jumping out of their seats to answer comprehension questions, and that has not happened for me before. Last year, I was also able to use the Amplify Reading app, which I know they haven't talked about, but it is it's a supplement, kind of like our Redbird in our math program. I was able to use that with my class. My kids loved using that app, and they didn't think it was babyish. It was personalized learning that mostly focused on phonics for my first graders. I am very hopeful that this is the curriculum I will be teaching next year. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Jennifer Call. I teach 4th grade at Elmwood. This is my 9th year teaching. So I'm really excited to be able to talk to you guys. Love doing this work. Spent a lot of time, extra time that I needed to, just digging through it, see what's out there. We've done this for many years. And through all of the time that we've spent, I really think CKLA is going to be the best answer for the school district of New Berlin. There's 3 things that really stood out to me in regard to CKLA. So the biggest thing is the rigor. Right now, in about an hour reading block, we teach about a 15-minute mini lesson. It's based on a skill, and then we give the students 45 minutes of independent work to try that skill out. As much as I would love to choose books and put them in their hands, we know that kids like to choose books that interest them, and I 100% believe that there's a time and place for that, but right now we're spending 45 minutes of them using skills in books that aren't quality literature. If you've heard of Dogman and Nate the Great and Diary of a Wimpy Kid, the kids love those books, and again, I think there's absolute place for them to do that. But I think that with CKLA, they will get quality and diverse text in front of them every single day. And that means a lot to me because we're teaching them these really complex skills and then they can't practice them in the books that they're choosing to read for 45 minutes. And that's that really important time that we need them to have quality text in front of them. The second thing that I really liked about CKLA is the intentional vocabulary instruction. That is something that our current program is missing. We show them how to look up new vocabulary, ways that they could pull it from content. But we kind of give them the invitation to do it, and the best way that we can keep them accountable and even make sure that that's happening to further them as readers is by conferring with them and meeting them on one-on-one. And when you're a teacher with 25 different kids, you're trying to make sure everyone has what they need, and sometimes it's just very difficult to make sure that they're getting vocabulary instruction, and this way they're getting vocabulary instruction and through nonfiction books on the same topic, through narrative books on the same topic, and the teachers that we've talked to just have said over and over how engaging the kids were in that. The last thing is the science of reading, something you've heard over and over. So I think that our kids do really well with comprehension. I'm going to be honest and vulnerable and tell you that I've had kids over my 9 years of teaching 4th grade that struggle with decoding. So looking at a word, how do you read the word, right? And I myself haven't even known always what to do because I have only ever taught units of study, and that's never anything we've taught the students. So I myself feel landlocked. And so it's really exciting to think that some of the kids that I've had in the past, now I might have the tools and strategies to be able to help those students not only comprehend what they're reading, but also be able to read it themselves. So thank you for your time.
Hi everybody, I'm Chris Reed. I'm the special education teacher at Elmwood. This is my 4th year at Elmwood. And one of my priorities with serving on this committee was to really advocate for a curriculum resource that would allow our teachers to have the tools that they need to considerably raise the achievement of all of our students, especially those with learning and attention difficulties and language barriers. And after a deep dive into many very good resources, I came out with Amplify on the top. For many of the reasons that the people before me have mentioned, it offers an incredibly strong and rigorous instructional design that holds all our students accountable for grade level standards. And that is very crucial, especially for our students that may be below grade level. Part of the issue that we have right now through curricular design is our students that are not at the reading level they should be are reading books that are below the grade level. And by doing that, they might be working on their independent reading skills. They might be increasing their decoding abilities a little bit, but they're not getting that other part. They're not getting that knowledge. They're not getting that language acquisition that all their other peers are getting. And that's wrong. That's their right is to earn and to practice at the same rigorous standards as their peers. I'm happy to say that Amplify provides teachers the resources to be able to do that. The instructional design is very strong. It offers a bevy of visual and audio tools to help our teachers make sure that everybody in that room is understanding what they are being taught. The foundational skills at the K-2 level are the type of instruction that so many of our students need that they right now only get by chance. And every student deserves to do that. It is much more rigorous, but I think that's what's going to be beneficial for all our students. And in addition to that, it also provides many remedial resources for our teachers to be able to respond if our students are having a little bit of trouble. It provides specific, explicit guidance for if a student needs a little bit more support, or if they're doing extremely well, how to enrich that for that student. So I firmly believe that this curriculum is going to give the teacher the resources they need to raise the achievement for all. And that is why I am strongly advocating that you consider Amplify for our district curriculum.
Excuse me, I'm Kate Stinson, District Literacy Coach at Ronald Reagan in Elmwood Elementary School. Chris is a really tough act to follow. But just speaking into what Chris and Jen and Nancy have said, I think one of the things that has just held true with me as a district literacy coach is the embedded professional learning that comes with this program. As a teacher, we don't know everything. We can't know everything, and the ability to look into a resource for guidance and support when I'm not there or Amy's not there to support someone or you don't have someone to turn to, I think is extraordinarily important for each individual teacher. So this is a very rigorous, explicit, systematic program. And so to have something to turn to for guidance is extraordinarily important.
Hello, I'm Amy Stepneski. I have been in the district since the year, I don't even want to say this, 2000. I do want to give you a little bit of background that I did start in the classroom. So I am now a coach and have transitioned to that in the past several years. So I do want to bring that lens of having those feet in the ground, and then also another lens of supporting all of the hardworking people in our district that are doing everything possible to help all of our students to be amazing readers. Literacy is just a passion, and so I just want you to know that aspect of it. I could speak to a lot of things of this program, but two things that I really did want to bring up. This has come up already in conversation, but one of the things specifically, one aspect, something that is very impressive and is very necessary is the rigorous, systematic instruction in phonics that helps to provide teaching to develop proficient and fluent decoders. That is the basis of where we begin. That builds that spark to be able to have access to reading. The other thing that I truly would like to say is that the texts that are chosen, a teaching or mentor text to bring about and spark understanding and knowledge, are sophisticated. They don't assume kids can't. They assume kids can, and that they can learn from texts that provide extremely rich vocabulary and background knowledge that not only provides background knowledge, but wants kids to be knowledge seekers. And we want that. So those are some of the things that I wanted to point out, and I do strongly urge you to look at these materials and consider this. This would be a great resource for our district.
So the elementary have stated their case, and so I'm coming at you from the middle school, high school lens. I'm Sarah Rouse-Borelli. I am the district, one of the district literacy coaches in the secondary world. And I, much like Amy, was in the classroom just last year, and I'm still have a foot in the classroom through reading intervention. And that's provided me a really nice lens, because I see what students are coming at from our elementary with maybe those skill gaps that they don't have. And as we looked at all of our resources, this need for transference, this need for vocabulary, the decoding skills that may or may not be in existence, the rigor. And we see here, as Chris stated, literacy is a right. We want every student to walk out of our school with this ability to read, no matter what level, and have enjoyment and engagement. And I think through CKLA, our teachers looked at this and found a lot of like what they're already doing matches. And that's a really exciting, and that was a really good thing for our secondary teachers to look at, because our middle school is very passionate and they're very excited to share the love of reading and engage our students in that. And CKLA did that, as well as provided some new things. One of the things that we looked at that we really enjoyed was the grammar component and how it aligns, and it's very embedded into what we are asking our teachers to do. And it too has a systematic instruction, and we compared that to what was happening in, let's say, our standards, but also in interest. I mean, for the first time, our students are gonna sit and hear about the hidden figures as one of the units that the 8th graders will study, and get a little science. There's some really nice exposures to resources that they don't think they knew, or a history or that knowledge. It doesn't necessarily match you're gonna go the knowledge path, but it's all interwoven, and it's been very exciting for us here. So as you look at CKLA, I think it's been very helpful for our middle school teachers, and they're excited to attempt it, very nervous, but they do like the idea of the rigor that's coming up with it. And I like it because I think it's gonna provide our students something new and different. Thank you.
So I just kind of wanted to briefly talk about the community review. The resources will be available at the district office in conference room A for the next 2 weeks. They are already set up beautifully. So if you are interested in reviewing them, please contact Diana at her email if you want to stop in and view them. And then the district office hours are 8:30 to 4:30. So stop in at that point. And lastly, I just wanted to take a moment to thank these wonderful people from Indiana and flying from Florida, and our staff who taught all day, and they have been so engaged in this work. And I am proud to work alongside Kelly and Brady and the entire team for all of the work that they did. And lastly, I just want to thank you. I mean, as a board, you gave us a charge. You said that, you know, as we agreed, our literacy scores are not where we want them to be. And we heard from you about a month ago, whatever you need, you let us know what you need and we'll get it for you. And I will tell you here today, based off of everything that we have heard and everything that we have researched, this is what we need. So thank you.
All right, so with that, I did want to let the board know that we have put together a document internally for ourselves based on board questions, comments, concerns. We have heard from one of you thus far, and we have worked to pull some of that information together. I would encourage all of you to please, if you do have comments, questions, or concerns, to get them to us immediately or as soon as possible to allow us time to be able to respond to that. And so with that, we will certainly entertain questions now. We're not seeking your approval tonight. We will be seeking your approval at the next meeting. And I would invite, I guess, whoever's best to answer the question to come up as needed if anybody does have any questions.
I do have one. And I think who went last? Sarah, what did you go last? I think you kind of alluded to it. What will the experience be like starting this tool in the later grades, not having kind of built with this tool all along? So is it going to be a rough transition for teachers and students? And I think partially at the middle school level, but then I'm also curious about like the first, second grade level, if they're missing some of those phonics skills that we're now being taught. I think, Chris, you said there's some resources the teachers can refer back to, but just curious on your impressions on that.
Our staff has worked really hard to kind of look at what the units are and really identify what they're going to be coming with and what we're going to be, how it's going to be planned out for the coming year. And I think that allows us to understand what strengths our students are going to bring. And I know Brady kind of made a joke about it, but data is always going to help us know what we're coming into, and that allows us to make the right choices for what our students are going to need, and fill the gaps as necessary. And that's where people like myself and Kate and Amy, we can come in and we can support our teachers. Our teachers are very skilled all over the board, and they're very excited about this at the middle school level.
And just to build on what you said about with our younger learners, that is definitely something that was already been considered when looking at any new resource that comes to the forefront, and that is extremely important. We do have assessments that we can give kids to kind of find out where everyone is falling, to be able to meet all of those kids where they're at, to build and fill, to fill those gaps that have potentially been built based on what has happened in the past. So please note that that's something that's absolutely important and has been considered already.
I have a question for CKLA, actually. Do we have any I don't know how curriculum works and how we test this, but do we have any randomized control studies that show the effectiveness of this? Or what is that measure that we can use for that?
Being recorded, so we have people watching from home.
Thanks for the question. I think the research site that we have shared, and I think Peter shared that with Brady and the team, would provide studies that have been conducted. I don't want to speak to the actual study that you're looking for in terms of that randomized controlled, without going back to that to make sure I'm speaking accurately on that. But we can provide that, the research site that we have with the research that we've done. And I know there's research being conducted as we speak, and looking at districts that have been utilizing CKLA for a number of years.
My microphone's on. It sounded like we have some of these resources in the class. Do we just have like a book or two that some teachers have looked at, or have we done a pilot that we've done with a classroom or a school, or what has been that?
I know at the elementary school there have been some pilots. At secondary, we've tried out certain lessons. Like Sarah was saying, some of the text sets that are in Amplify we already utilize within our units of study that we have. However, the questions that go along with it in the vocabulary building, et cetera, are a little bit different.
And then real quick, when we were looking at the data 2 weeks ago, last board meeting, there was 5 districts that were ahead of us that kind of sparked this conversation. It was Hamilton, Elmbrook, Muskego, Pewaukee, and Kettle Moraine. All of them ranked higher than us. And from my research, they are not headed in the same direction that we are with this. Is that correct?
I don't know. I can't speak for those other districts.
Okay. Did someone do the research? Do we know what direction they're headed in? Or?
Yeah, I mean, there's a couple different things. One is, where are they at with their curriculum review cycle? So that could be one piece. Secondly, quite honestly, some districts are just choosing to stay the course. And that's okay. Based on our body of evidence and our work, we don't believe in that. And I can appreciate the question. But, we are a district that doesn't necessarily follow, and in fact encouraged by the board in some cases not to do so. And so that is why we actually reached out to comparable school districts throughout the United States because we didn't have local neighbors to be able to speak to related to this work. As I did share in the general summary that I provided to the board last week, there are entire states that are actually moving in this direction. In fact, there is actually local legislation being pushed right now. And in fact, I've done some of that work over the course of the last year to find out why is there a push related to the science of reading. I actually firmly believe in local control. I don't believe that we should be legislated on what we should or shouldn't be doing here in the school district of New Berlin. So that is where, or kind of like imposing cursive writing on us. While I can understand what they want to do, I don't believe that the government should be telling us our business in the school district of New Berlin. But my point was, I did ask questions as to why are they pushing for this? It's because of the body of work and the evidence that's being provided that this is critical, that moving in this direction is, you know, the passion behind what some of these legislators are doing is because of us, so many school districts being stuck in the old way and not following the research. And in fact, you know, in talking to Lucy Calkins, for example, there is no research there whatsoever to support what's happening. And in talking to her, the only change she's really looking to do, other than some minor changes, are focusing on social justice and equity. And that wasn't exactly what I wanted to hear when there wasn't really any changes being done to the work that actually should be happening. We were actually quite disappointed. While we were thrilled and somewhat awestruck to be able to talk to her, that was her response, was extremely disappointing.
Yeah, I don't disagree with you on that, but all those districts are sticking with their current Lucy Calkins. So my assumption is they're on the same curriculum path as us within a year.
I don't
yeah,
know.
I don't know exactly either.
Yeah, I don't know.
But I guess that's my concern is we have 5 districts that are ahead of us, and we're going in a different direction, and they've been remaining ahead of us. So that's my concern, that if we don't have any tested neighbors around us that have seen this after a year, I'm just a little bit hesitant to jump in full steam ahead and implement this across all of our districts. So.
Any other questions?
So I noticed that we have the Amplify Curriculum, right, K through 8, and then beyond 8th grade, we have different, and it looks like sort of a different, you know, a mix of different resources. So, yeah, can you talk a little bit about that, Kelly? Thank you.
So 9th grade, we are recommending a product through HMH. And so the reason for that specific grade level is we heard that our 9th grade classes were actually less rigorous than our 8th grade classes. So we knew we needed to do something different than what we're currently doing right now. So we heard that from our students specifically, as well as our teacher interviews. And you could see it in our data that there was a little bit of dip. Also, we needed something uniform across 9th grade. We do see an influx of new students at 7th and 9th grade the most across the district. So we want something foundational in 9th grade. We're still continuing with honors and regular. There's some differentiation between the honors and regular. Even within the HMH, there's some enrichment. But when we looked at it, what could give us the best continuum from Amplify through high school, the HMH product really was it. They also have some strategies. Is it notice and note?
Okay, because
yes, they use notice and note, which
yeah. Yeah, and that was my other question. How do we integrate that sort of K through 8, you know, program, which is totally separate from HMH,
Yeah.
right?
Yep,
And
absolutely.
so that was my other question.
So I
How
think
we
it's
gonna bring
important to notice these are just resources, right? So within the unit and curriculum design, you can build in that flow throughout. For example, we use claim evidence in research, reasoning, it changes CER across all of our 7th and 8th grade content areas. It's not necessarily in the resources in the books, but we know that that was an important skill for our middle school students to work on. So we built that in our units ourselves, and it becomes part of the curriculum. It becomes part of meeting the standards. So we would do the same thing, despite it being different resources 8th to 9th, to create that continuum of language, reading, writing, research. in 10th grade, the feedback that we got from our families, students, et cetera, was we have a very unique curriculum in 10th grade, and it's focused on world literature. A lot of the textbook companies had world literature that was like half Brit lit. And it really didn't examine Middle Eastern, India, Russian, a little bit of Brit, but all over the world, and we felt like that was really important. Our families were saying that was really important. So we are sticking with tightening that up a bit to make sure it flows between 9th and 10th grade with some of the same skills that students are doing in 9th grade, and still knowledge building, because actually our social studies teachers also told us that really helps. The knowledge that they're learning with some of the literature that they're reading in 10th grade is transferring into social studies as well, and it's helping them prepare for 11th grade, which is the ACT year. 11th grade, as you know, our students take AP language or they take English 11. So English 11, we thought we could do a better job within our American literature focus. Right now we do it chronologically, and we're going to switch to more of a theme-based as we prepare students to really focus to do well on the ACT who are in that 11th grade literature. So when looking at our units compared to that resource, we felt like that had the strongest preparation for students within the ACT and the most rigorous critical thinking that we saw. So that's why it's a little bit different. Our alumni feedback from our composition and our senior electives were good. That's something that we're going to continue examining, and we might come up with a proposal in fall, which is typically when I would bring new courses or different courses to you for senior electives.
Okay. And then I don't know who this is for, maybe for Brady, because I think, Brady, you were talking about the districts that you reached out to talk about this proposed new adoption of curriculum. Sure. Because it sounds like there aren't a lot of places around here that are doing this, how did you decide to whom you needed to reach out as far as that goes?
Oh, yeah, good question. So I worked with Peter a lot, and I said, Peter, I promised Peter when we started this, actually, I promised all our vendors when we start this process that I will be the biggest pain in the rear that they know, and actually, I think I've lived up to it, maybe. At any rate, he tipped me off on a few. A gentleman in Pennsylvania, suburban Pittsburgh, that I've worked with actually quite close, who's then built connections with other districts around the country, and so there's a neat. I met a woman from New York, Stephanie Finn, her name is, I think. I can't remember. Don't quote me on that. But I know her first name. But at any rate, she said her district was much like our district is proposing to kind of take a leap, and now she's in collaboration with 33 other districts in her local area that have all jumped into going with CKLA. So again, it's kind of that. Peter started me with one guy, and then I was able to do some detective work, so to speak, and then actually have a conversation with someone in Texas on Wednesday and someone in Arizona tomorrow. So it's actually been a really neat learning experience for me too, because it's not just learning about the program, but it's then also learning about, well, what else do you guys do in your schools? And I picked up some really cool things. So really nice.
And then I just have one last question, and that is what I want to know if my takeaway from this, one of my takeaways from this presentation is accurate, and that is, I feel like where you guys are all going collaboratively with, by the way, thank you for including teachers in that process.
Yeah, our pleasure.
Because, man, they have to deliver this stuff, and boy, that's important to be part of that decision-making process. So I really
And teachers always are, just to clarify.
I'm not saying it as though it never happened before, Joe. I'm
Right.
saying I appreciate it when that happens, and I know that they do too.
Well, they've been really instrumental in the whole
That's
process.
Wonderful, and I think that they have to be for it to succeed, right? So what I'm taking away is it sounds like this curriculum is going to do a lot of things, but in part, it's going to address the whole science of reading at the core, right?
Yeah.
Is that a good
Yeah.
takeaway
Yeah, I
from
think
this?
at the core it'll address.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
That's what I wanted to make sure, because
yeah.
that's way more complicated than I ever thought about reading in terms
yeah.
of the mechanics of it. So I appreciate you bring that up as a basis for it, and thank you for all your efforts.
Thank you.
Any other comments, questions, or concerns?
I just have a final comment. I wanted to just say thanks for putting this presentation together, obviously for all the rigorous work that you guys did. And thanks, I don't know, Joe or Kelly, who put together the list of links and articles and podcasts and webinars and things for us. I really appreciated just the little glimpse, even though it was kind of a huge glimpse, into the process that you guys went through and figuring this all out and kind of having some of those background materials before this meeting. So thank you for putting that together for us.
I have one, actually, a couple. So we were talking about the reading choices for the K through 8, and I sort of had a strange takeaway from having discussions with my daughter the other day, but we're also, all of us are sort of working on trying to learn Italian as well. And I've talked to many language teachers. So in the early stages in the books when we were dealing with phonetics, my youngest daughter brought up she hates the word or the phrase Pacific Ocean because the seas are all different. And she goes, drives me bananas. I don't like it. And it was just funny. It was just a funny comment that actually like 2 days ago. But the reason why I'm asking about the book choices and you're going through the phonetics, because the English language in itself is actually quite difficult. So you're looking at a whole different book structure and catalog of books that you're going to be using as opposed to the ones that you're having, the Diary of the Wimpy Kid. So will those be still available, or you're looking to like try to push other variations for the learning? No, it's not a negative in any way, shape, or form. It's just I'm trying to get a bit better of insight of what you're bringing into the classroom and how are they sort of related. Because I know early on language is stored differently in your brain up into the age of 5, and then it starts to change. So.
Yeah, so it's funny that you talk about your daughter. I have actually 2 5-year-olds right now. They're Irish twins. So I had been talking with Brady when we were going through this, and I was like, vowel teams. I don't know what are vowel and all these language rules that I had no idea as well. And so, yeah, that's something that will be kind of embedded. Sorry, can you repeat your question?
I get turns back on. I keep forgetting. I know I talk loud, but
no,
not for the recording. So, so the question is I'm wondering about the library and the library that you're going to have for it. How you're doing things phonetically. I mean, the learning of a language now, especially like we're doing Italian, and it's bananas.
Yeah.
How many different words they use for the exact same word because of, relation. And I know the English language can be difficult, so I love the fact that you keep using the term rigor, because I have wholeheartedly believe that if you talk to a child like an adult, they will understand you like an adult. They have way more capacity than most people give them credit for, so I love the idea that this is happening, because I have seen programs dumbed down to make things easier for, hitting certain numbers or criteria, where to me, if they're challenged, they're going to rise to the top. They always do. So.
Yeah, so one thing I really appreciate about CKLA is, so right now we kind of have reading, we have writing, and some of us do, some word work, different depending on the grade and whatnot, and they're all kind of separate. Word work's about Susie on a teeter-totter, and, writing is about the solar system, and the nice thing is it's all combined and intermingled, and so like they would be reading about, like in 4th grade, one of the things I'm excited about, like medieval empires, and I don't know much about it, so I'm excited to know about it. So then like the grammar instruction they would be doing would be using those high-level vocabulary words, and so it's like it's all intermingled, and that's why that rigor's there. To be honest, because I know, Chris, we talked about all students, and in New Berlin we have a very high population of high-achieving students, and I think that this program will absolutely help them as well, thinking about all ends of students' needs. But I don't want to quote me if I'm wrong, Brady, but I believe we're still keeping our libraries, because we still want, we want to learn about medieval empires, but like if you need 10 minutes where they have cub time and you want to read about Diary of a Wimpy Kid for the 17th time, you go for it, because it's still that love of reading still keeps that.
So I teach 1st grade, so it is all about that learning of the the phonemic awareness, phonics, all those things. And in my classroom right now, and I have been very lucky in that I have a principal that has supported decodables. And he found some money in the budget so that we in first grade could buy a good amount of decodables. And those are books that use the skills and features that I've been teaching. So if I'm teaching about our controlled vowels like ER and IR and AR, that I have books that kids can pick up and read that and practice those skills and features. They can't do that in the predictable textbooks that I have tons and tons of that I've been gathering for 6 years, 7 years now. So we keep those decodables there so they can practice those features and those skills that I'm teaching, but you still have to have those, like the older kids were saying, like the Captain Underpants and all those kind of books, and just like the princess books and the spider books and all those books, because we still want kids to love reading. We want them to be loving reading for the rest of their life. That is the important part of all of this too. You can't love reading if you don't know how to read, and you have to be able to decode first. So having decodables and then those other great, fun, exciting books for them, that's what's important. So I think that might have addressed your question.
It does, and thank you all for your wonderful excitement. It's great. It's a great energy. I love it. Thanks.
Anybody else? Okay, my turn, I guess. So I was going to have questions about it being applied in the classroom already. I think Mitch had already asked that, so it sounded like you've actually already tested out in the classrooms. So maybe to expound on that, were there other teachers besides those of you who are here today? Like, how many classrooms are we looking at? Basically something at every grade?
Yeah, so the team, took some, like Nancy. I think Nancy did the most. I think it's being rolled out to teachers now. So the kits that we all dug into and went through are. I know we're starting a third grade in Ronald Reagan right after the break here. Fourth grade, Jen's gonna start some stuff, in the coming weeks as well. So. Yes. The members of the committee have tried it out in various capacities throughout the course of this year, and then we'll be doing it continuous throughout the end of the year. We also, pending approval, we have some different kind of 1 week starter packs for all teachers to use. If again, pending your approval, we would distribute those right away so teachers could get them started. And then we've worked with Peter as well to put together a professional learning, part to get with teachers. So it does take a bit of professional learning as well to get started. So, yeah.
And real quick, just as sort of how we do this in the past, like in the past, we've always had teacher teams reviewing resources, and it's always those that are on the team that are the ones that are piloting it. Because they just have the background knowledge of kind of where we're at. They've kind of dug into the data. So it really is people testing it out that are part of that committee work. It's just kind of how we've done it in the past.
And it was also mentioned that there was some parent feedback, so I'm assuming all these kids who have been testing it out. So what type of feedback have you heard from the parents in regards to what their children have been doing?
Can't speak for the feedback that I've gotten from parents because I haven't taught it. But I will tell you what I heard from other districts, because one of my questions is, how do parents respond to it? And I think I put it in the board quotes. One particular gentleman that I talked to said, some parents are not happy with us because kids are wanting to plan their trips, their family trips, based around what they learn in the whatever the knowledge unit is. So that's one really interesting thing. I think, I heard from one other person that, he's heard from parents who have moved in where they're like, oh my gosh, you guys teach this? This is like, one, really rigorous, and two, this is amazing that you teach this. Our kids have so much knowledge. We actually do have a parent of, there is a local district that is trying, or has started to use this. We actually have one of those people, her kids go to that district. That was sounded weird. But her kids go to the district, so she's actually, so I talk to her just about every day, and she's like, oh my gosh, you wouldn't believe the vocabulary that my kid had today. You wouldn't believe the, the spelling words or whatever he had. He's so engaged in his reading. Another principal that I talked to said, yeah, it's really unbelievable because, to kind of, Jeff, to your question, like what is, they gain this little bit of knowledge, and they're like, then all of a sudden, like, it takes off because they want to learn more about the War 1812 or the human body or whatever. So they're going to the library and they're grabbing all those books as well. So I can't speak for exactly what other parents have said in our district for the various teachers that have tried it, but those are some things I've heard from other districts as well. So.
Okay. Anything else? Thank you very much for this presentation. Thank you for coming out tonight and sharing with us. I feel like we need a break. So now we're going to move on to some policies that we have up for approval. The first one is discuss approve policy 2261, Title I services, replacing our current policy 6144.2.
Motion to approve.
So I have a motion to approve by Mr.
Came from
Seidel.
Finance, so we don't need a second.
Oh, I'm sorry, it came from finance, yes, so we don't need a second, but thank you anyway. So is there any discussion? No discussion on this one? Okay, then all those in favor, raise your right hand. All those opposed? There's none. Motion passes. And then we have discuss approve policy 2261.02, Title I, Parents' Rights to Know, replacing current policy 6144.1. Do I have a motion?
Motion to approve.
This was also from finance, right? Okay, so we have a motion from Mr. Seidel. It came from the Finance Committee. Any discussion? Okay, then all those in favor, raise your right hand. All those opposed? Motion passes. And discuss approve policy 60, wait, is this up for? Yes, this is up for approval. Discuss approve policy 6605, crowdfunding.
Motion to approve.
So I have a motion to approve by Mr. Seidel that came from the Finance Committee. Any discussion? Then all those in favor, raise your right hand. All those opposed? Motion passes. Discuss approve policy 6110, federal funds.
Motion to approve.
I have another motion from Mr. Seidel that came from the Finance Committee. Any discussion? Then all those in favor, raise your right hand. All those opposed? Motion passes. And we have first read of some policies. Policy 5830, student fundraising, and 9700, relations with non-school affiliated groups. Do we have any questions on those?
I just have one question. Were the student fundraising was last month, but now it's included with 9700. So do we need to table 5830, or can we?
That's just a first read at this time.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
So no need for approval tonight.
All right. Thank you.
It's just tonight is for any questions you may have to clarify to understand it before we actually vote on it next time.
Yeah, let us know if you do, and if you do, I'll be sure to run past Ron as the finance chair, or Patrick would.
And just to clarify, this policy 9700 is a brand new policy to us. We didn't have this policy before. So, but we had to consider adopting it because of the change with the fundraising policy.
Correct. All right, so if there's no more questions on those first reads, we'll go on to the action items discussed in closed session. So we have at least one motion.
I move to approve the employment services report as presented.
Second.
I have a motion by Mr. Kurth, a second by Mr. Helmer. All those in favor, raise your right hand. All those opposed? Motion passes. We have our future meetings and dates. Board meetings are generally held the second and fourth Mondays, beginning at 7 o'clock p.m. in the Eisenhower Commons, unless noted otherwise. Our next one is April 11th. It includes a building tour here at Eisenhower. After that, then it's April 25th. It includes the oath of office to new members and a board reorganization. Prior to that, though, is a 5:30 Finance Committee meeting. And is there anything else? For some reason, I felt like I'm missing something. Oh, yes, important date is April 5th, Election Day. So then, do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
I have a motion by Mr. Helmer, a second by Mr. Kurth to adjourn. All those in favor, raise your right hand. All those opposed, motion passes. This meeting is adjourned.